You being the Secretary General of NATO, there's been a lot of talk about withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I'm curious if you could possibly give us a timeline or certain benchmarks or anything like that.
Yeah, we have outlined a roadmap for a gradual handover of lead responsibility to the Afghan security forces. We are in that process already, and it will be completed by the end of 2014. So from that time, the end of 2014, the Afghan security forces will take full responsibility for the security in Afghanistan, and our current ISAF mission will end.
That was my next question. There's been some criticism from Russia in particular, saying that there's a possibility that NATO could keep that ISAF units beyond the withdrawal date. Is that certain that that's not going to happen?
We will stay also after 2014, but it will be quite a different mission. The current ISAF combat mission will end by the end of 2014. After 2014, we will stay in Afghanistan, but with a training mission. So we will continue to train and educate, give advice and assist the Afghan security forces, but they will do the combat.
Would that require the United Nations Security Council's approval?
We operate in Afghanistan on the basis of a United Nations mandate, and I would expect the United Nations Security Council to provide a mandate also for a training mission after 2014. But according to international law, we can conduct such training activities on the invitation of the Afghan government. And we know that the Afghan government will invite us to conduct a training operation after 2014.
There's criticism here in the United States, particularly Joe Lieberman, a Senator McCain, saying that the withdrawal is too quick and that it's a rush to failure. Can you address some of that criticism?
We have outlined this roadmap in close coordination with the Afghan government. We find it a realistic timetable. We started last summer to gradually hand over lead responsibility to the Afghans, and right now around 75% of the Afghan people live in areas where the Afghan security forces have taken lead responsibility. This transition process has been a great success so far, so I'm confident that we can complete it by the end of 2014. So in other words, I find it at a realistic timetable.
I want to switch gears to the situation in Iran. The United States, Great Britain, and France has a tremendous amount of naval power in the Gulf. We're getting ready to undergo a very large exercise. We know Iran's getting ready to undergo their own exercise following that. Netanyahu has addressed the United States citizens on TV, kind of an unprecedented move. What do you see are going to be the developments here in the next few days with the Iranian situation?
First of all, I will stress that NATO as an organization is not engaged in the Iran question. Individual allies are, but NATO as an organization is not involved. But obviously, we follow the situation closely and urge the Iranian leadership to comply with its international obligations and stop the enrichment program. I do hope that the international sanctions and the political pressure on the Iranian leadership will lead to a peaceful and a political solution to the problem.
It seems that Netanyahu wants the United States in particular to draw the so-called red line for Iran, that they have to meet this criteria by a certain time or they're going to act. Do you think Iran will respond to that kind of pressure? I mean, they really haven't responded to the heavy economic pressure that's been put on to date.
Yeah, but actually it is a hypothetical question. We don't know how involved parties will react. As I said before, I do hope that a combination of strengthened sanctions and diplomatic and political pressure will lead to a peaceful solution.
With the number of countries involved, as I said, U.S., Great Britain, France, and a couple other countries do have their navies in the Gulf. Do you see if conflict erupts, fighting starts, that NATO would be able to stay out of the situation?
As I stressed before, NATO as an organization is not involved, but as you mentioned, individual allies conduct activities in the region, also with the aim to demonstrate that it is of utmost importance for the international community to keep the sea lanes open.
Moving on to Syria, there's a situation that's still very volatile, fighting. We still have Assad digging in. We still have Russia and China insisting that the West not step in. What do you think it's going to take to get that situation to at least get sides closer to coming to the table and talking about getting peace moves underway?
First of all, I have the very firm belief that there is no military solution to the problems in Syria. We need a political solution. I strongly regret that the international community, represented by the UN Security Council, has not yet been able to find an agreement on a binding resolution that could send a clear message to the Syrian leadership. But still, I think the Annan plan constitutes the best framework for a political solution. And it is absolutely outrageous what we are witnessing in Syria, and I strongly condemn the crackdowns on the civilian population. The Syrian leadership must understand that no regime can, in the long run, neglect the will of the people, and there's only one way forward in Syria, that is to accommodate the legitimate aspirations of the Syrian people.
Would you also be that critical? Would you also be that critical of the opposition forces? And if you could elaborate, is there any relationship with NATO and the anti-Assad forces?
No, NATO is not involved in the Syria issue, and we have no intention to intervene militarily. It is my clear position that we need a political solution. Obviously, we follow the situation closely. Turkey is a NATO ally, and Turkey is a neighbor of Syria and can be impacted by what is going on in Syria. And NATO stands ready, of course, to do what it takes to defend and protect Turkey as a NATO ally, if needed.